If you've ever stood in a room full of people laughing at you while pretending it doesn't hurt, you'll understand why that night broke something in me. On paper, I was fine. 32, decent job in a mid-sized marketing agency, steady paycheck, health insurance, a small apartment with a view of a brick wall, but at least it was my brick wall. No flashy career, no big drama. Just a guy who showed up, did his work, and tried not to make waves. The problem was my manager. Her name is Melissa. Early 40s, always in sharp heels you could hear before you saw her. Eyeliner so precise it looked like it could cut glass. She had this way of smiling when she said something cruel, like she was doing you a favor by packaging the insult nicely. Constructive feedback, she called it. The first time she took a shot at me in public, it was small. We were in our Monday stand-up, everyone half awake, coffee cups in hand. I gave a quick update on a campaign I'd been stuck on and said I was still waiting on client approval. Melissa tilted her head and said, "Well, if we all moved at your pace, we'd be sending Christmas emails in March, wouldn't we?" People chuckled. I forced a smile, looked at my shoes, made some joke about needing more coffee. It stung, but it passed. You learn to swallow those things. Rent doesn't care about your pride. It didn't stop there, though. It never does. Over time, it turned into a pattern. If a presentation went well, she would say, "Great job, team," look around the room and then add, "and shout out to me for pushing you guys so hard." If there was a mistake in a file, even when it wasn't mine, she'd find a way to bring my name into it. "Grant, can you double-check this? I know details aren't your strongest suit." I work in details. That's the joke. I told myself she was just stressed. That middle management in our place was a meat grinder, and she was just trying not to be the next one chewed up. I'd been through a divorce the year before, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to fight anyone. I just needed stability. Show up, do the job, go home, pay the bills. The office party was supposed to be a break from all that. It was an end-of-quarter thing. Management rented out a big event space with awful acoustic panels and too much colored lighting. There was a DJ, a bar, a buffet with food nobody touched until they'd had at least one drink. The kind of corporate fun you show up to because not going is more suspicious than going and standing in a corner. I almost didn't go. I sat on my couch that Friday afternoon, tie already feeling too tight, staring at my reflection in the black TV screen. I thought about my ex-wife posting pictures with her new boyfriend at real parties, where people actually wanted to be there. Then I thought about my boss noticing I wasn't around and labeling me not a team player on some invisible mental spreadsheet. So I went. The room was already loud when I walked in. Music thumping, people shouting over it, cheap laughter bouncing off the walls. There were little clusters of coworkers at high tables, clinging to their drinks like life rafts. I grabbed a beer and hovered at the edge of a group from my team, nodding along, smiling when someone made a joke. Melissa was in the center of it all, of course. Red dress, loud laugh, holding a glass of white wine she never seemed to actually drink. She air-kissed the regional director, slapped the VP on the arm, ruffled the hair of the new intern like she was everyone's friendly aunt. Every time her eyes passed over me, I felt like a lamp she'd decided not to turn on. An hour in, the managing director tapped on the mic and asked everyone to gather, near the small stage they'd set up. "Time for a few shout-outs," he said, already a little drunk. The way people get when they're trying to pretend this is all spontaneous. We had a big quarter. Some people really went above and beyond. People clapped, whistled, shuffled closer. I stood toward the back with my beer, thinking about how long I had to stay before it wouldn't be rude to leave. They went through the usual names: sales, accounts, someone from finance who saved us all from a nasty surprise. Then Melissa took the mic. I felt my stomach tighten before she even said my name. Call it experience. "So," she began, smiling like she was about to give out scholarship money, "I want to take a second to recognize someone from my team. He's not always in the spotlight, but he's always in the office, People laughed. That polite, automatic chuckle that says nothing. She scanned the room, eyes landing on me. "Grant," she said, pointing the mic in my direction. "Come on up here a second." My heart did that slow drop it does on elevators. I hate being in front of a crowd, but saying no wasn't an option, so I set my beer down, walked up, and tried to look less uncomfortable than I felt. The lights were too bright. I could feel everyone's eyes, or maybe I just imagined it. Melissa put a hand on my shoulder like we were close. "This man," she said, squeezing, "is the king of staying late. If you walk past our floor at 9:10 p.m., you'll see one light on, and it's his. We actually checked the logs." She laughed, and I realized she was serious. "He's logged more after-hours time than anyone else in the department." A few people clapped. Someone whistled. I gave a small, awkward shrug. "In fact," she went on, tilting her head toward the mic like she was sharing a secret, "we were joking the other day that the real reason he's here so late is because he doesn't have much of a life to go home to." It landed like a slap. There was a silence, the kind that lasts just long enough for your face to heat up. And then the laughter came. Bigger this time. Louder. I caught a couple of people looking at me with that half-sympathetic, half-amused expression that says, "I wouldn't want that said about me, but thank God it's you and not me." She wasn't done. "Seriously, though," she added, patting my chest with the back of her hand, "if you ever need someone to take extra work off your plate, just ask Grant. He'll say yes. It's not like he's got a wife and kids waiting, right?" That one went in deep. The divorce was not a secret, but it wasn't a joke either. A few of my closer coworkers knew how ugly it had been, how much money I'd lost, how long it had taken me to stop waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like I'd swallowed a brick. Melissa knew too. I'd told her once when I asked for a day off to sort out court stuff. The crowd laughed again, but it was thinner now, stretched over something uncomfortable. Somewhere in the back I heard someone say, "Damn," under their breath. I stared at a point over the audience's heads, jaw tight, my hands feeling wrong, hanging uselessly at my sides. I could have joked back. I could have taken the mic and said something self-deprecating, turned it into a bit. That's what people expect you to do. Turn your own humiliation into entertainment, so nobody has to feel bad about it. Instead, I just stood there for a second too long. Long enough for the laughter to die on its own. Melissa must have felt the shift, because she cleared her throat and said, "Anyway, seriously, we appreciate your dedication. Big hand for Grant, everyone." She shoved the mic back at the director and moved on to the next topic before it got weirder. People clapped. I walked off the little stage, picked my beer back up, and pretended to check a message on my phone so I didn't have to meet anyone's eyes. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a belt around it and kept pulling. A couple of coworkers came up to me afterward with that awkward, half-whispered, "Hey man, she was just joking, you know how she is." One guy bumped my shoulder and said, "At least you're famous now, right?" I laughed like it was fine. It's amazing how many things you can fake if your job depends on it. I lasted another 20 minutes, stood in a corner, watched Melissa work the room, laughing and flirting and acting like she hadn't just taken my worst insecurity and thrown it on the floor for everyone to step on. Then I put my empty bottle down, grabbed my coat, and slipped out the side door without saying goodbye to anyone. On the walk to my car, with the bass from the party still thudding faintly through the walls behind me, something settled in my chest. Not rage exactly, not even sadness. Just a quiet, very clear thought. I'm done letting her decide who I am in front of other people. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, the office looked exactly the same. Same gray carpet squares, same buzzing lights, same burnt coffee smell, but something in the way people glanced at me had shifted. Not dramatically, not kindly, just aware. Like I'd been bumped one rung lower on a ladder nobody admitted existed. I walked to my desk, logged in, and tried to convince myself last night had been a blip, a bad joke, a moment that wouldn't echo. But the thing about public humiliations is that it doesn't stay in the room where it happened. It travels. People carry it with them like secondhand smoke. At 9:17, Melissa walked in. Heels, perfume, the practiced smile, the whole performance. She swept past my desk, coffee in hand, and said, not looking at me, "Morning, Grant. Hope you didn't take last night too seriously. You know how these parties get." I didn't answer. She didn't wait. On the floor, conversations dipped for half a second, then resumed. A couple of people avoided my eyes. One guy from sales gave me a sympathetic half grimace, the kind you give someone who dropped their lunch tray in high school. I opened my inbox. There they were. 3 emails from Melissa sent at 11:48 p.m. Subject lines: update on deliverables, quick fix needed, urgent, before client call. She'd sent them during the party. Of course. I clicked the first one, and before I could finish reading, she called across the room. "Grant, did you see my emails? I need those updates by lunch." I kept my eyes on the screen. "Yes," I said. "Great," she replied, already moving. She always said great, like she'd handed off something heavy. I worked in silence. The hours crawled. At one point, our intern approached my desk with a question, but before he could finish, Melissa called him over sharply. "Don't hover over Grant. He's already behind." Loud enough for 2 rows to hear. He apologized to her. To her. My jaw tightened. Around noon, she stopped by my chair and lowered her voice just enough so only I could hear. "You looked upset last night." "Don't." People laughed because it was funny. "Don't make it weird." I stared at the spreadsheet on my monitor. "Understood." She patted my shoulder. "Good. Let's move on." But I didn't move on. Something inside me clicked into a different position, like a gear catching. By 2 p.m., I opened a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Work Notes. Inside, emails, screenshots, meeting logs, version history. Not revenge, not anger, just accuracy. If she wanted to make a narrative about me, I was done letting her be the only one writing it. At 3:30, we had a client prep meeting. The whole team gathered around a long table, while Melissa clicked through slides she'd prepared. Half of them were mine. I knew because I wrote them. I recognized the formatting, the order, even the typos she hadn't caught. When she finished presenting, the director nodded approvingly. "Great work, Melissa. Strong deck." She smiled like a spotlight was warming her skin. Then she said casually, "Grant helped with some of the grunt work, but the strategy is mine." Grunt work. I didn't react, just clicked my pen once under the table. The director didn't notice, but a couple of my coworkers glanced at me. One with a wince, one with uncertainty, one with resignation. Melissa didn't see any of it, or she pretended she didn't. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk slowly. For the first time, I didn't feel embarrassed, not angry either, just tired. Tired of carrying other people's carelessness like it was my responsibility. It got worse 2 days later. She made a mistake in a campaign timeline, sent a client the wrong date for a launch. When the client called, irritated, Melissa marched straight to my desk. "Why did you give me the wrong info?" she demanded. I looked up from my screen. "I didn't," I said calmly. She blinked, startled by the tone. "Yes, you did," she insisted, holding up her phone. "The client says—" I opened our email thread, scrolled, stopped, turned my monitor toward her. The date she'd asked for was correct. The date she'd forwarded the client was her own typo. The change in her expression was microscopic, but I saw it. The flicker of being caught. She straightened. "Well, next time, make it clearer," she snapped too loud. A few heads turned. I didn't raise my voice. "Next time, read what I send you." That did it. Her nostrils flared. "Don't get smart with me, Grant. I can replace you in a week." I met her eyes. "Then you should have done it already." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut paper. She stepped back, stunned, because for the first time I wasn't playing my assigned role. I wasn't the quiet guy. I wasn't the punching bag. I wasn't the one smoothing everything over. Not anymore. "I'll talk to HR?" she hissed. "Do," I said. "Make sure you include the part where you sent the wrong date." Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned and stormed to our office. A coworker at the next desk muttered, "Holy shit!" Another whispered, "Finally." But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something else, something steadier. Like the ground under me had stopped tilting. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was just done being the only adult in a room full of people who mistook cruelty for leadership. I went back to work. At 5:13 p.m., I clicked save on the final file and closed my laptop. Melissa was still in her office, blinds half drawn, pacing. She didn't look at me when I walked out. I stepped into the evening air, cool and steady against my face. The street was quiet. My head was clear. And even though I didn't know it yet, that one moment, showing her the email, refusing to nod along, would cost her everything. By Monday, the building felt different. Not visibly, not audibly, just charged. Like the air before a storm, people spoke quieter, doors closed softer. Even the break room microwave beeped like it was afraid of someone. That's when the email went out. Subject: Internal audit. Q4 review and process check. Mandatory participation. Deliverables due this week. Audits weren't rare, but they weren't routine either. Usually they meant the upper floors were nervous about something. Money, deadlines, client satisfaction, performance. None of us knew which one it was this time. But Melissa did. I saw it in the way she walked into the morning meeting. Stiff, smile too tight, clutching a folder like it could keep her afloat. She sat straighter than usual, interrupting people twice as fast. Every question directed at her came back out coded in defensiveness. When the director said, "We'll need all project documentation starting from September," her hand tightened on her pen. All documentation. Everything. That word echoed in her skull, because she had spent months rewriting the past as she wanted it to look, taking credit, shifting blame, editing emails, deleting threads, forwarding pieces out of order. She was used to chaos, used to improvising her way out of corners. But audits don't improvise. They ask for proof. She didn't have it. I did. At my desk, I opened the folder I'd been adding to quietly for weeks. Work notes. I clicked through the subfolders, each one full. Saved emails, time-stamped files, version histories, meeting summaries, screenshots of messages, voice memos I'd taken after certain conversations, every detail that confirmed what really happened. Not because I planned this, because I was tired of living in a version of reality she could edit at will. At noon, Melissa called me into her office. Door closed, blind shut, perfume sharp enough to sting. She pointed at the audit email. "Did you see this?" "I did." "Good. I'll need you to gather the project history for the Baxter account." "I already did," I said calmly. Her eyes narrowed. "I meant the parts I worked on." "All the parts are included," she exhaled sharply. "Grant, don't get literal. We need to present a unified front. One narrative." There it was, her favorite word, narrative, as if the truth were optional, as if facts were props. "Melissa," I said quietly, "the auditors want accuracy." She leaned forward. "No, they want clarity. And clarity means we show them something tight, clean, consistent." I held her gaze. "You want me to change things." "I want you," she said slowly, "to be a team player. Don't overthink." I didn't answer. She tried again, voice dropping to a whisper. "Look, Grant, if anything in those files makes me look bad, you and I both know it'll reflect on the whole team. You don't want that." I watched her for a moment, really watched her. The panic she was trying to hide, the desperation under her composure. The fear that came when someone who built their world on manipulation suddenly needed the truth to cooperate. "I'll send everything," I said. Her jaw tightened. "Everything?" "Yes." Her face stayed still, but something behind her eyes broke. She looked down at the desk, pretending to shuffle papers. "Fine," she said weakly. "Just make sure it's organized." When I left her office, I heard her chair creak, a soft exhale, and for the first time a sound I'd never heard from her. Fear. That evening I uploaded the files to the audit portal. All of them. Chronological. Clear. Professional. No comments. No accusations. Just reality, lined up like dominoes. I didn't add a single sentence pointing fingers. I didn't need to. The next morning, the auditors arrived in a glass-walled conference room on the 12th floor. Melissa walked in with too much perfume again, too much makeup, too much energy. Like she was trying to outrun something. I was called in an hour later. "Grant," one auditor said, "thank you for your thorough documentation." Melissa's head snapped toward me so fast her earring almost flew off. The auditor opened one of my folders on the screen. Version histories, email chains, task lists showing who did what, timestamps, her edits, my originals, her comments, my corrections, her mistakes, my fixes. A perfect, quiet record. Melissa shifted in her chair. "I'm sure Grant didn't mean to overwhelm you with details," she said, voice brittle. The auditor didn't look at her. Details are exactly what we needed. They asked questions, calm ones, technical ones, fair ones, I answered clearly. Melissa tried to jump in, tried to redirect, tried to joke, tried to talk through me. But every time she did, the auditors gently cut her off. "We'd like Grant to finish." With each answer I gave, something shifted in the room. The tone, the weight, the balance. Melissa began tapping her foot, then her pen, then her nails on the table. Her voice lost its edge. Her smile lost its shine. And then the auditor pulled up an email, one she'd forwarded to the client with a wrong date, the one she blamed on me. "Can you confirm which version is accurate?" the auditor asked. I said, "The original. I sent that to Melissa at 10:42 a.m., as shown." "And the modified version sent to the client?" "Not mine." Melissa's voice cracked. "Wait, hold on, But the auditor continued, unfazed. "And these comments, assigning errors to Grant, are these yours?" "Yes," she said quickly. "But that's just how I keep track. And the errors referenced here," the auditor added, tapping the screen, "are not present in any of Grant's versions." Silence. Not the awkward kind, the kind that means something's gone wrong. That afternoon, she didn't leave her office. Blinds shut, lights off. People walked quietly past her door like she was recovering from surgery. By Thursday, HR sent out a vague email about temporary reassignment of responsibilities. Her title was gone from the signature. By Friday, she wasn't at her desk. Her office was empty by Monday. Nobody said the word fired. Corporate never does, but everyone felt it. The vacuum she left behind. The shift in the building. The way people spoke normally again, like a spell had broken. Co-workers passed my desk quietly that morning. Some tapped the top of my cubicle wall as they walked by. One nodded. One murmured, "Good on you, man." Another said, "About time." But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm, like the room had finally stopped tilting. And for the first time in months, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and took a deep breath that didn't feel borrowed. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Melissa didn't return the next week, or the one after. Her office stayed dark, blinds half open like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. People avoided looking directly at it, the way you avoid staring at a car crash you passed hours ago but can't quite forget. Corporate sent a formal announcement on a Tuesday morning. "We wish Melissa Thompson the best in her future endeavors." That was it. No explanation, no farewell lunch, no slideshow, no awkward cupcake gathering in the break room. Just a single sentence that said everything without saying anything. By noon, her nameplate was gone. By the next day, nobody even asked where she went. Offices move on fast, especially from people they were secretly afraid of. The director called me into his office that afternoon. His tone was friendly but measured, the kind of tone people use when they've made a decision and are about to see how you take it. "Grant," he said, folding his hands on the desk, "I wanted to speak with you personally. The audit team was impressed with your documentation and with your professionalism." Professionalism, a word that felt strangely heavy after months of being treated like background noise. He continued, "We're restructuring the department. We'd like you to step in as interim team lead while we finalize the new org chart. Interim. Everyone knows what interim means in corporate language. We're testing you, but we already know the answer. I nodded. I can do that. He smiled. Good. And Grant, we appreciate how you handled things. Quiet strength is underrated. Quiet strength. Funny considering how invisible I used to feel. When I left his office, a few of my coworkers glanced up. Nothing dramatic, just small acknowledgments, tiny shifts in posture, brief nods. Respect, in its smallest but most honest form. I didn't need applause, just the absence of being stepped on. The first week as team lead was peaceful. No sarcastic comments, no whispering behind blinds, no occasional footsteps speeding toward my desk like a storm front. The team actually began to function like a team. People felt freer to ask questions, to suggest ideas, to make mistakes without bracing for impact. One afternoon, the intern, who Melissa used to bark at, stopped by my desk. Hey, Grant, thanks for, everything. He didn't specify what everything meant. He didn't have to. I nodded. You're doing good work. Keep going. He smiled like someone had just lifted a weight off both shoulders. Around that time, small things in my life started falling back into place. I slept better. I woke up earlier, not because I had to, but because my mind wasn't heavy. Breakfast tasted like breakfast again, not like something I chewed through just to get to work. I fixed the loose handle on my kitchen drawer, cleaned my car, called my sister for no reason other than I felt like hearing a familiar voice. Little victories, quiet ones. The ones you don't notice are missing until they come back. 2 weeks after the audit fallout, I ran into Melissa's closest friend in the office, Becca from HR. She spotted me by the elevator and hesitated before speaking. You heard, right? She asked. I didn't answer. She continued. She's not doing great. Says she doesn't understand what happened. I looked at her calm. I'm sure she'll land on her feet. That's it? Becca frowned. You don't care? I thought about it. The months of undermining, the public digs, the jokes about my divorce, the moment she humiliated me in front of a room full of people for a cheap laugh, the blame she shoved onto me to save herself, the way she expected me to bend so she didn't have to break, and I realized something simple. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her misery. I just didn't owe her my silence anymore. I said, choices have consequences. She made hers. Becca opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. We weren't on the same team anymore. Maybe we never were. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. She didn't follow. A month later, corporate removed interim from my title. I became team lead. My salary increased. My hours actually decreased. The team's output improved. Funny how a department breathes when you stop choking it. On my first quiet Friday in the new role, I stayed a few minutes late, not because I had to, but because it felt good to finish the week clean. The office was dim, computer screens asleep, chairs pushed in neatly. I grabbed my coat, shut down the lights, and walked toward the exit, past the place where Melissa once stood, and told the whole room I didn't have a life to go home to. But now I had one. Not dramatic or glamorous, just mine. A life I built back, piece by piece, after someone tried to make me feel like I didn't deserve one. Outside, the air was cool. The street was quiet. My steps felt lighter than they had in months. When I reached my car, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, but steady ones. A man who'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. She thought I was someone she could shape into a punchline. She thought I'd stay small because she liked me small. She thought I'd break quietly. She was wrong. I opened the door, sat down, and let out a long breath that didn't hurt. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just arrives one day and takes the seat you kept open. And for the first time in a long time, I drove home feeling like the life waiting for me was actually mine.